Familiar position for you, 15 years in at this point, man. I mean, is that crazy, like meaningful? I mean, to be at the highest level of the sport for 15 years, is that meaningful to you?
Yeah, definitely. It's funny, right before I came here, I was talking to my wife about it. I spent a huge portion of my life in the UFC, you know. I got in when I was like 21, 22, and now I'm 37, so been here for, it's been a long time.
That's crazy. Damn near more of your life in the UFC than not in the UFC.
Yeah, right.
That's crazy. When you were coming in, I mean, I remember it. It's wild. Were you even thinking 15 years down the road at that point when you were just a kid coming into the UFC trying to make it?
No, not at all. You know, it's something, I don't know, I never really thought about it. It was always the goal to get to the UFC, but I never thought about the longevity of it or, you know, how long I would stay in there. But I also never really saw myself not being in the UFC, you know?
Right.
That makes sense. But yeah, definitely, yeah, it's been a long time. I don't even, it's hard to remember life prior, you know?
Absolutely. And what about as well, like maturing not only just as a fighter here, but like, I mean, like a leader around Extreme Couture? I mean, did you ever envision taking on that role? And what does it mean for you to now be like the guy that people look up to?
No, again, another thing that I never really thought of. I kind of just naturally grew into that role, I guess you could say. And it's so weird because it does, even though I say that it's weird not picturing the life before UFC, but it still does feel like just yesterday when I was first stepping, you know, into Extreme Couture and just in awe of being there. Like, we had looked up to this gym for so long, and then when I got there, all the fighters that were there, you know, and just being around them, and then Jay Hiran, you know, being like, he was kind of like my entry in. When I first got to Coutures, he was fighting Joe Riggs, and he needed a southpaw, and he's like, "Yo, kid, you southpaw?" And I was like, "I can be." And so I sparred him southpaw a couple rounds, and then he's like, this is like a Tuesday or something. He's like, "Yo, what are you doing Thursday? Can you come back?" And I was like, "I will be here." And that was kind of my in. So I sparred him southpaw the whole camp, and that was like my in to Coutures. And I was just a young buck then, and now, like, the role that he was in, you know, I'm kind of that role now, you know, guys looking up to me, calling me captain and whatnot, and asking me, like, is this okay or is that okay? So, yeah, it's kind of cool.
That's an awesome story, man. All right, so obviously you fought anybody and everybody your whole career. What do you think when they gave you the name Gerald Meerschaert?
I loved it. You know, it's a fight that I actually wanted. I think stylistically it's a good matchup. Gerald's a very tough guy, but I think for me, very beatable. Not taking anything away from him. I feel like that's the downfall to a lot of the people he's beaten, because a lot of his fights you'll watch, you think he's down and out and it's over, and here comes Hail Mary, you know, and he pulls it off. And so you got to respect that about the guy. Another veteran who's been here a long time, has a lot of fights, a lot of experience like myself, so definitely not overlooking him.
Yeah, it's kind of weird when this fight was announced. I was like, they certainly must have fought at some point, right? Like, but you haven't. Is it weird that you guys have never crossed paths? Because you two guys have been around forever.
Yeah. When you put it that way, it is kind of funny. You know, you think like two guys that have been with the company so long, in the same division for so long, kind of like, you know, side by side for so long, that we have never crossed paths in the cage. But here it is now.
Yeah, you talked about his style. I mean, I think your style, gritty as well. I mean, are you expecting this to be a 3-round battle? Because it seems like it's going to be that kind of back and forth, gritty type fight.
Yeah, for sure. Because he's a tough guy. You know, he is hard to put away. And even when people think they got the fight in the bag with him, you watch his film, you see a lot of his fights, he'll pull it off. He'll find the way. You know, so he's one of those guys that he'll find the way to get it done. And you have to respect that about him. And I feel like a lot of people, maybe even mid-fight, maybe some of them go into that not respecting him, and some of them, because they're doing so well, they forget almost, you know. And I feel like, again, experience. I've made that mistake in the past before, where I've done so well early on, and I kind of let off the gas or got away from the game plan a little bit, and then ultimately, you know, it doesn't work out. So it's something that mentally keep reminding myself, mental repetitions.
Yeah. What's more nerve-wracking for you, stepping into a UFC cage or being mat side for your kids' jiu-jitsu tournaments?
100% the jiu-jitsu. It's like it's your kid. That's why. And right now, they're small. It's fairly safe. But one of my other friends, must have been last year already, but it was at one of the tournaments that we were at, and I was talking to him, and his son and daughter do jiu-jitsu. It was the daughter's first tournament, and she ended up breaking, I think, her arm. Yeah, she ended up breaking her arm, the full 9, stretcher, hospital. And I was hoping, I was like, hopefully it's not anything too serious. I texted him later, like, hey, how's your daughter doing? And he's like, bro, she broke her arm. And so he was gutted. That being said, though, I was like, frick, hopefully I know she was nervous. It was her first tournament. I was like, hopefully this doesn't deter her. And he's like, bro, funny enough, she's just pissed off that she's going to miss mat time and her brother is going to advance more than she is. I was like, I love to hear that. But, yeah, definitely when it comes to the kids, that's your baby, so.
It's worse. It's way worse.
Yeah.
Can the Raiders turn it around this year? What can you expect?
Come on, please. Please. No, I'm happy about it. I like the Pete Carroll hire. John Spytek, I like it. And I like what they've been doing. We haven't really made the big free agent signing, but I like what they're doing, the guys they're bringing in, signing them all to, like, 1-year prove-it deals. I love that. That shows you that they're bringing these guys in and be like, hey, you want a job? You want to extend? Go out there and earn it. So hopefully, fingers crossed. I'm not that typical Dallas Cowboy, this year is our year fan. I'm very cautiously optimistic when it comes to them. Straight up, I've been let down so many times. So I'm just hoping for the best, praying for the best.
I'm born and raised in Dallas, and I've basically given up at this point. So. Last thing, man, like I said, I've been 15 years at the top of the sport. What's driving you? Like, are there things you got to tick off before you say I'm comfortable? Are there accomplishments, opponents? Like, what's left for you at this point?
I think what has always driven me is competition. I've always been competitive. When I think back to the very beginning of how I got started in this sport, in this career, on this path, it was funny. So I just did a podcast or interview with Matt Serra this morning, and he was asking, like, oh, what was your training before fighting? And I was like, bro, I have none. I literally grew up fighting. Like, that's part of culture in Hawaii. You grew up fighting, and that is what has always driven me. We'll be somewhere and there will be another tough guy, and it's just mano a mano, like, oh, who's tougher? Let's see. How are we going to find out? We're going to fight. And so I think that has always been there. And, that's what still drives me in the gym, is like I'm still trying to compete against my training partners, and doing it safely. But still, I want to beat them. They want to beat me. And that's how we make each other better. And I still feel the same way about the rest of the roster. I want to, whoever they put in front of me this weekend is Gerald. I want to prove that I'm better than he is. I'm the better, superior fighter. I want to beat him. And so I think that's what's kind of always driven me and what still drives me.
You mentioned, you touched on it right there. You've been in the game for so long, but are you still learning new tricks? I mean, is it the young cats coming in the gym that you learn something new, or are you still finding things about your game that you could still tweak and learning new things out there?
100%. I've been saying this, I think, my entire career. I think the second that you feel like there's nothing left to learn, you're done. You will never get better. You'll never evolve. You'll never grow past that point. And I've seen it over the years. I've seen guys who literally, you'll try to tell them something, this and that, and they might not be straight up and be like, nah, but you can tell that they're just like, yeah, uh-huh, and in one ear out the other. And when they hit that point, it just goes downhill from there. This is one of those things. This sport is actually very new. It's constantly evolving. You guys have been covering the sport a long time. You guys have seen the waves of the different types. Early on, it was the jiu-jitsu. Royce Gracie was just submitting everybody. People learned how to defend that, started doing jiu-jitsu. Then here came a wave of strikers, right? And then boom, here come the wrestlers, and then the wrestlers that know how to strike, and now they're dominating. Now the strikers learn how to wrestle. The game is constantly evolving, and you got to evolve with it or you get left behind.
was going to say, you've seen it change quite a bit, and I was going to ask you, in your time in the sport, what's the biggest thing that you've seen change in the MMA space? Is it the techniques, like you mentioned? Is it the acceptance to people outside? What have you noticed that since when you got in that you're like, I can't believe this is what it is like now?
I think just the evolution and the growth of the sport is more minds, different backgrounds are all coming into it, which if you think about it, that's what MMA is, right? It's the mixture of the martial arts. And early on, it was people coming from specific backgrounds who were really good at that and then adding little things in, whereas now everybody's pretty good at everything. Like, you have guys that, they might come from a wrestling background or a striking background, but they're getting really good everywhere. They're becoming just very, very well-rounded in everything. Like, it's hard to find a guy nowadays that is like, oh, yeah, he's a great striker. Like, look, Alex Pereira proved it. He is a great striker, and he was able to stop all of Ankalaev's takedowns. And granted, Ankalaev is not, I guess, technically a wrestler. He's more of a striker, but he is a wrestler. He can wrestle. He's no slouch there. So you see the evolution of the sport, and I think that's what the difference is that back then people were just pretty good at one thing and fairly good or decent at other things. And now people are just getting really good at everything. They're becoming perfect weapons.
And I talked to Gerald a little bit about it. What is your thought on the importance of being at the right gym? You're at Extreme where, there's so many great bodies. There's so many people to learn from. I guess how much did that play into the factor of how well you were able to become the fighter that you are now because you were surrounded by the people? And is it still possible for somebody that's maybe at a smaller gym to get the reps in and still get to this level?
It is very possible, but definitely you're going to see more success coming out of the bigger gyms, and that's why you see so many people, especially the people I think outside of the country. A lot of them move here and join the Coutures, the AKAs, the ATTs, all these top gyms, Jacksons, and it's because they've outgrown their small gym. Like, it got them to a certain point, and that's not to say that they can't be successful, because they can. Like, you look at Max Holloway. Max kind of was with Gracie and been there ever since, and I don't know how they run it, if they bring people in for him when he fights or whatever, but he's pretty much stayed there and done it and been successful at the highest level, one of the greatest fighters in the game. But the vast majority, we get people from all over the world. Turkey, Russia, Georgia, like everywhere that, come in, and that's just what you have to do. So yeah, people from the smaller gyms, they can do it, but when you jump into these bigger gyms that have all of these different looks, you're able to grow your game so much faster, because if you train with the same people all the time, regardless of if they're really good, you guys kind of know what to expect.
You plateau.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Like, that person in and out, and if that's what you're seeing every single day, it's going to be harder. But if you're at a big gym and you have just top quality training partners that are very different, that bring very different looks, you see it all. It helps you adapt in the cage.
Yeah. And just a couple more. You had mentioned the story, of the young woman that hurt herself, the young kid that hurt her arm. Did you ever have a moment in your career that something happened to you, whether it's an injury or something, where you maybe thought, or you maybe questioned whether it was the sport for you or whether you're going to ever do it? Did you ever hit a roadblock that you had to get over to get back into the game?
I would say not so much that I felt like my career was over if I couldn't return or whatever. I would say definitely when I tore my ACL, just being sidelined for so long and not being able to do the things that I normally do on a daily basis, like the training and whatnot, that definitely took its toll. And there would be times where, like, I didn't even realize it, but I was like probably a little depressed about it, and then I had to like get myself out of the funk. That would be the only thing though. But there was never any point where I faced an injury where I was like, oh, I'll never come back from this. Like, I think in this sport, you got to be very mentally strong.
Yeah, I think you touch upon it. I think that's what we hear from fighters over and over again. You know, the physicality is one thing, but the mental side is, if not the toughest, and that's the part that they find themselves battling with more further on into their career.
Yeah, 100%. I would say that this sport is 90% mental and only 10% physical, because I've seen great athletes that the mental is not there and things go wrong, adversity happens, and they can't get past it, and they can be physically a specimen, but if they kind of get that mental side, which is the vast majority of it, in check or on the right page, it doesn't matter what your body can do. Your body's only going to do what your mind tells it to. So it's all about the mental.
And then last, your keys to the victory. What needs to happen on Saturday to make sure you get your arm raised?
I need to just keep the fight my fight, execute my game plan and not let it get into where he wants it to, where, like I have these, myself and my team, we've gone over some things where, most likely how we see the fight going, which is probably off of his film and the type of fighter he is and how he normally fights. So just sticking to my game plan and, implementing my game plan in there.
Is Extreme Couture just collecting all of the middleweights on the planet, or what's up?
Oh, I love it. We went through, there was a time where I was like the biggest guy in the gym. Like it was maybe me, a bunch of like 55ers and smaller guys, maybe a couple 70s like Martin Kampman, Jay Huron, and then maybe randomly a 205er and a random heavyweight. It was scarce at one point. We went through a low point, and then rest in peace when Flawless came on. He helped, and Eric and Dennis, they took over. They helped right the ship, and Extreme Couture has been going like this ever since. And now it's crazy. We're like a big guys gym. Myself and Ty Guerrero, we were just having this conversation. We're like, bro, we went from, not having any big guys to being like a big guys gym now. Like we have so much guys now that we have to split our practices just for mat space, where we do 70 and up and 55 and down. And now the 70 and up practices are bigger than the smaller guys.
That's crazy. How good is Mansour Abdul Malik?
Oh, that kid is a monster. I was fortunate enough to be in his corner his last fight in Seattle, and I could tell he was very upset with how the fight went. He's like very hard on himself, but I told him after, I was like, bro, I love that fight for you. Why? Because he's pretty much been able to just buzzsaw smash everybody, right? And now, even though he pretty much smashed this guy, he did face a little adversity, and I loved seeing how he reacted to that. He was able to keep his calm, get his head back, and then start executing game plan again. So, yeah, the future is very bright for him.
How cool is it to see Maki kind of transition into a very, very, very good coach?
Oh, I love it. Maki has always been one of the most solid people I've ever known. Like, even before he and I were consistent training partners, when I would go back home, he was actually one of the first guys I would hit up to like set up some training. Like if I was just home for like a week or so, and it's just like one of those random trips, I would hit him up and be like, hey, what you doing? Can we do this, and that? And he was always down to help. He's one of those guys, big heart. So yeah, I love seeing the transition. He still dips his toes in the fighting side a little bit, but you slowly see him taking over the coaching role. Is becoming a bigger role for him, and he's doing well with it.